This is Algebra 2B, Statistics Lesson 7, Stats with Sheets. So we're going to do something a little different in this video. Normally we have, like lectures with definitions and some examples, but instead I'm going to be walking you through 3 activities using Google spreadsheets, okay? The activities are described here. We're going to use sheets to try to find some of the statistics we've studied, like measures of center, 5-number summary, measures of spread. We're going to do another activity using some different data to make some graphs. And one more activity, we're going to do some scatter plots, trend lines, correlation, that kind of stuff, okay? So this is really just a reference. You're not going to need this. What you need is go to the Google Classroom and find the assignment linked there. So on your Google Classroom, make sure under classwork, make sure in the Algebra 2B class, we're looking for this Stats with Sheets assignment. And when you click the link here, it's going to open up a sheet just for you. I got mine open here already. We're going to start with the first activity, Peter and Amulet. I am reusing some of the data that we already saw in lesson 3.1 exercise number 2, where we were comparing the scores that Peter and Amulet got on some other math assignments. Basically, the way that this whole thing is set up is anywhere there is a yellow box, right? That's where you're going to be putting your answers in, okay? And I'm going to walk you through a lot of this, but I'm not going to do everything so that you have some opportunities to see how it's done and then some opportunities to practice on your own also. So we're going to start with measures of center. Our 3 measures of center that we talked about were mean, median, and mode. And Google Sheets has some functions built into it that you can calculate these things if you know how to type them in. Now I gave examples based on the notation over here, and then I'm going to explain kind of what that means. So in this box right here, I'm looking to get the mean for Peter. And you could, on your side calculation, you could add them all up. You could divide by how many numbers there are. On Sheets also, if you highlight the data, down in this corner here, it gives you a couple quick stats. Like right now, I know that the average or the mean is going to be 86. I'm going to use this function here where I can, in this box, hit the equal sign first, and then I'm going to type the word average. I'm going to open up parentheses, and in the parentheses, I need to put the data. There's a couple options, like I could type the numbers 82, 86, 81, 84, 87. I'm just typing the numbers that I see in that list, right? And when I hit enter, it'll calculate the average. I also, instead of typing the numbers, could actually type the cell locations. I should have lined this up better. There we go. There we go. Right? So 82 is in cell B2. So I could say B2. And then 86 is in cell B3. So I could say comma B3. And now it's looking for the numbers. My bad. It's looking for the numbers to see how they're even highlighting. There's B2, there's B3, there's B4, right? And I can keep typing all those. But the best way, which is what I put as the example, is if you use a colon, first number, colon, last number, it'll include everything in that range. So I'm going to go B2 colon B8. Now it's going to average the numbers from B2 through B8. So it's highlighting them in yellow, so I know that's what we're doing. And I still got the same answer. So equals average B2 colon B8 is probably the fastest way to do that. I'm going to do this one. We're looking for the median of Peter, and I'm going to go straight to this formula too. So I'm going to go equals median, open up a parentheses, and I can type B2 colon B8. Capitals really don't even matter too, so you don't have to capitalize those. And enter. One more option, equals mode, open up a parentheses, and again, I'm going to do the same range, but instead of typing B2 through B8, I'm going to click on B2, and notice how it filled in B2 for me. I'm going to hold the Shift key and click on B8. Now it's selected everything from B2 through B8. So I gave you probably like 12 different ways to do that. I want you to try to see if you can do Amulet scores kind of the same way. Okay, because I was looking at my B data, make sure for Amulet you're looking at your C data. So your formulas are going to look really similar, but with some C's instead of with the B's. I'm going to jump down to 5-number summary, and we're doing the same thing. If you click on this data, highlight it, down in the corner again, you have these quick stats. So obviously I already know that the min is 81, but we can use a function too to type equals min. And then again, we're going to put what data we're looking at. We're looking at the data from B2 through B8. So you can type B2 colon B8, or you could click B2, hold shift, click B8. It'll highlight everything in that range there. So we got the same minimum. I'm clicking this X here because this is trying to do the minimum again, but obviously I'm trying to do the numbers over here. Lower quartile. This one's a little different. So for quartile, our example is we have actually 2 parameters that are going to go into our function. We need the range, but then also which quartile we're looking for. So I'm going to go equals quartile, open up a parentheses. I want the quartile of Peter's data, so B2 through B8. And then I'm going to go comma 1 because I'm looking for the lower quartile or the first quartile. Close off my parentheses, and my lower quartile is 83. So no more worrying about ordering the numbers first, no more worrying about making sure that I have an even or an odd set of data, right? Median, we actually already did. So I'm going to give you 2 options. We can use that exact same formula, equals median B2 through B8. I'm going to even shortcut this and be like equals B13 because my median is B13. And look at that, it's the same number. Now the point of this too is if you have data and you're changing your data points, like maybe this was wrong and this was a 90, notice how these all get updated automatically. And this is giving me an NA because there is no mode, right? Okay, I think I'll finish these off. I was trying to decide if I should keep going. I think I'll finish these off. So we're doing upper quartile again. Equals quartile, open up a parentheses. We need the range of data that we're looking for, B2 colon B8. And I'm looking for the third quartile, also known as the upper quartile. So I'm going to put a 3 there. And now that is my third quartile. And finally, maximum. The format is right here, equals max. And then we put the range in the parentheses. B2 through B8. You can type it. You can hold shift while you select, and it's going to do the same thing. So again, practice with amulets. Try to make sure you have not just the numbers here. I don't want you to type in the answer, right? I want to actually be able to see the formulas in your cells here. Measures of spread. Okay, so range. There is no function built in. We can't go equals range. Spreadsheet doesn't have that. But we know how to calculate range. It's the maximum minus the minimum. And luckily I have these values right up here, right? So I could do equals max and then select my data and then minus min and again select my data, right? That's one way to do it. Max minus min. You can see that here equals the max from B2 through 8 minus the min B2 through B8. What I want to do maybe is just equals this number minus this number. So I'm going to subtract the number in B22 that I already found was the max minus the number in B18 that I already found was the min, and it is the same answer. So interquartile range, we could do the same thing. We could do this, right, minus this. But because I already have those values calculated, instead, I'm going to use B21 minus B19. So I'm doing my upper quartile minus my lower quartile. And it's nice that they color code so we know what's what. Bam. Standard deviation. That was the really complicated, annoying, giant formula with the sums and the squares and the differences and the roots and the variance. So we're going to use STDEV to stand for standard deviation. We go equals STDEV, open up a parentheses, and again, we just need to input our data. So boom, shift, boom, and that is the standard deviation in 12 seconds instead of 700 minutes. Lower fence. Okay, no function again, just like range. There's no way to actually just calculate the lower fence in sheets, but we know the formula is first quartile minus 1.5 interquartile ranges. So I'm going to use the points I have up here, equals First, I need my first quartile. I found my first quartile right there. And then I'm going to subtract 1.5 times minus 1.5 times. And then next I need the interquartile range, which I do have right here. So low quartile minus 1.5 times interquartile range, enter, and that is my lower fence. I'm going to do really similarly for the upper fence, equals the upper quartile plus 1.5 times the interquartile range, enter, and that is my upper fence. Now we can use these again to determine if we have any outliers. So if my minimum is lower than 77.75, I have a lower outlier. My minimum is above that, nothing outside the fence, no lower outlier. But you can see that my upper fence at 91.75, and I have my max at 98, that 98 is an outlier. It's higher than the upper fence. Again, please go ahead and do Amulet's scores using the exact same thing. Make sure you're using your C's instead of your B's, but otherwise the formula should look really similar. At the bottom here, we have 4 questions that I would like you to answer on your own based on this data. I'm going to go on to activity number 2. At the bottom here, there is a tab for US presidents. Here's where we're going to practice doing some graphs. Here I have the United States presidents in order of their presidency. And in this column here, we have the age at which they started their presidency. We're going to use this data to do some graphs. So first, we're going to do a box plot. Now, Sheets doesn't actually do box plot. It does something called candlestick, which looks kind of like a box plot, so we're going to use that one. We already talked about how to do the min, the lower quartile, the upper quartile, the maximum. So we're going to use the same formulas we talked about. To do minimum, we hit equals min, open up a parentheses, and then we're going to select the data, and the data in this case starts at C2, 57, age of George Washington when he started his presidency, and goes all the way to C47. So I'm going to hold shift and click. You could also just type in C2 colon C47. And now we know that the youngest president ever was 42 years old. I'm going to do max next. Same idea, equals max, open up your parentheses. And I already remember that it was C2 colon C47. So I'm just going to type that in. Notice how it's highlighting in yellow, so I know I got the right values here. The oldest president ever is our current president, Joseph Biden. And quartiles. This is one where we had to have 2 arguments in our function. We needed the range, but also which quartile, okay? So here, equals quartile. We're doing C2 through C47. And I'm looking for the lower quartile, also known as the first quartile. So I have C2 colon C47, comma 1. The lower quartile is 51. So that means 25% of our presidents were younger than 51 when they started office. Upper quartile equals quartile. We're putting in C2 through C47, and I want the third, also known as upper quartile. 25% of our presidents were older than 59.5 when they started their presidency. And this means 50% of our presidents were basically in their 50s, right? Between 51 and 59. So now that I have these 4 values, I can make my candlestick sort of box plot. To do that, we're going to highlight starting at F12 and going all the way to J12. We do need to have a label and then the 4 values. The candlestick chart doesn't plot the mean, but it does do the other 4 values. Once that's highlighted, I'm going to go to Insert Chart. So up here, Insert, and we're going to go down to Chart. And it gives me some suggestions. Sometimes it gives you the right one right away, sometimes it doesn't. But under Chart Type, if they don't suggest the right one, you can scroll down and find it in here. Under Other, we have Candlestick Chart. I already have the right chart type, so we're good to go there. I'm going to now move this because he's kind of blocking my directions, and I got this box here for you to move it. So we're not going to block anything we need to see. So I got my chart down there. And last, customize. So I'm going to rename this box plot So I can double click, right? Box plot. You also have under customize, you can change the title. You can play with the colors if you wanted to. There's lots of options in here, and I'm not going to ask you to do anything. It's just if you want to play around and change some stuff. But once you have it customized how you want, that is our basically finished blocks plot. I'm going to close the chart editor. Next, we're going to do histogram. We're going to use the same data. So step 1, highlight the age data, but this time we're going to include the column label. So I'm going to start at the top, C1, all the way through C47. I got that highlighted. I'm going to insert a chart. Under chart type, I want to select histogram. Oh, look. It already defaulted to the one I wanted. If it doesn't give you the right one, you can always scroll down and find it in all of these graphs right here, histogram. He put him way up here. I'm going to drag him down just so we can kind of go down where he needs to be. There we go. Now, I don't like the bin width of this histogram. You notice it's going by 6.67. That's a really weird interval to me. So I want to change the bin to something that makes a little bit more sense. So to do that, we're going to go to Customize Histogram. And we say bin width. Sheets says bucket size. I'd rather go by 5s than by 6.675s. That seems to make more sense to me. Now, if you wanted to, you can change the title here, you can change the color of your bars, you can kind of do whatever you want for customization, but I would call this a good-looking histogram. Now, with that histogram created, again, there are some questions to answer down here. Maybe I'll do this one. We already showed how to do the upper fence and the lower fence on the Peter and Amulet tab, but lower fence, again, is going to be equal to the lower quartile. And I'm going to scroll up and find that here. Lower quartile minus 1.5 times. I don't have the inner quartile range here, but I know how to find it. All I have to do is subtract my quartiles. So I'm going to open up a parentheses, and I'm going to do the upper quartile minus the lower quartile. Okay, so I have lower quartile minus 1.5 times the upper quartile minus the lower quartile. So for upper quartile, it's the same thing, but upper plus instead of lower minus. And if I hit enter, I got that lower quartile figured out. So do we have any lower outliers? No. We already knew that our youngest president was 42, and you'd have to be younger than 38 to be an outlier. But I'll have you finish these questions off on your own, and I will go on to the third activity. AFV standing for Alternative Fuel Vehicles. Here we have data from the 1990s showing how many alternative fueled vehicles were in use in the United States. This is actual data from the U.S. Department of Energy. We're going to use this data to make a scatter plot. So first I need to highlight the data, including the labels. So I have B1 through C9 highlighted. Insert chart, and under chart type I want scatter. So this one gave me histogram to start. I'm going to change that to, right, they suggested histogram, but I want to use scatter. If it's up in your suggested, you can go ahead and click it. If it's not up there, you can scroll down and find your scatter right here too. Same deal. So now I have a graph with years on the x-axis, with how many vehicles in use on the y-axis. This data looks pretty linear to me. I like it. I'm going to drag him here just so he's out of my way. I guess, yeah, just so he's out of my way so I can see what I do next. So I got my data selected, I got my scatter plot. I'm going to add a trend line, okay, line of fit. So with our chart editor open, if you close it on accident, you can always click on the graph and then it'll open up. Under Customize, we're going to go to Series, and then we're going to go to Trend Line. So we called it Line of Fit. They're calling it a trend line. And notice how it added this line here. That looks like a pretty good line to me, right? We have some data points below, some data points above, some right on. If we want to see what the equation for that trend line would be, under Label, we can change this to Use Equation. So now it's giving me the equation of my trend line. So this is my slope, right? It's showing that we're increasing by about 19,000 vehicles each year. My intercept value is given in scientific notation. I'm going to write that one out here because that might be a little difficult, but I'm going to keep going. We talked about correlation. This actually uses determination, but we can use that to find our correlation. So R squared is 0.928. To find correlation, or R, we should have to square root it. So what is the equation of the trend line? Y equals 18891x. That's my mx plus b, right? Y equals mx plus, let's go negative 374, but I have to move my decimal 7 places. That's what the E7 means. So if my decimal was here, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And let's add some zeros because that's a big number. Bam. So my equation is y equals 18,891x plus negative 37,400. Now, y-intercept, remember, is how many vehicles were in use in year 0. It's a little outside the context of this problem, but that's why it's such a big negative number if you're going back 2,000 years, right? Correlation coefficient, like I said, this is R squared, not R, okay? So to get R, we need to square root that number. So we're going to go 0.928 root. This is one of those backwards calculators. If you're one of the blue ones, you do square root first, type in the number, but I got 0.96. That's a very high correlation, right? 0.96. So is this a good model? I would say yeah. Like I said, you have dots above, dots below, dots right on. It looks very linear, right? That's a very high correlation. I like it. Use your model to predict AFV use in 1996. So you could do this one of two ways. You could use the graph. 96 looks like it's right in the middle of 300, 400, so about 350,000. You could also plug that number into your, trying to highlight just the X. He's now working for me though. Bam. So we would do 18,891 times 1996 plus negative 37.4, blah, blah, blah. Yeah? Predict use in 2017, same deal, plug the 2017 in for X. I'll let you do those two on your own. Now we're going to scroll down, and this is an opportunity for you to do another scatter plot. You're going to follow the exact same steps from up here, but the data now also has how many AFVs in use in 2017. So we're going to see with that high leverage point what happens to our scatter plot. Follow those steps, get a new scatter plot, and we're going to follow similar questions at the bottom there. So I know that was a super long video, but we did a lot of the work together. Obviously, if you have questions, need help with your formatting, please let me know. And good luck with that.